The last time the federal minimum wage was raised feels like ages ago, and it's hard to believe that in today's world, $7.25 an hour is still considered a livable wage. That only adds up to about $15,000 a year, which is well under the poverty line for families. So the big question is, could a new president bring a push for higher minimum pay? The federal minimum wage was first introduced in 1938 under President Franklin D. Roosevelt, starting at just 25 cents an hour. Over the decades, it gradually increased, but in more recent years, it has remained unchanged. As a result, many states and cities have stepped in to set their own minimum wage standards. Business Insider's Emily Stewart points out that while the federal rate has stalled, local governments have taken action.
Arizona's minimum, for example, is $14.35. California's is $16, and West Virginia's is $8.75.
The federal minimum wage remains $7.25, but many businesses pay more to meet labor market demands. To hire and retain workers, companies have raised wages. At Walmart, starting pay is now $14 an hour.
Every time anybody talks about raising the minimum wage, businesses act like the sky is falling, all hell will break loose, that they will have to lay everyone off, that they will all shut down. But much of the evidence suggests that's not the case. When people have more money in their pockets, they can spend it at the grocery store, at the restaurant down the street.
When Seattle raised its minimum wage in 2014, 99.3% of its businesses stayed open, even though the labor market wasn't as strong as it is today. Research shows that increasing the minimum wage can boost worker productivity and reduce turnover costs, since employees who earn more tend to stay longer.
I don't want to ignore the risks here. In Seattle, some workers did see their hours go down as businesses tried to compensate for having to pay them more, though most of them still did see an increase in their net pay, and less experienced workers, teens in particular, had a harder time finding jobs.
The Congressional Budget Office has a tool that models the potential effects of raising the federal minimum wage. Its estimates show that a higher wage could lift many families out of poverty, but it might also result in some job losses depending on how high the increase is. That's a real concern for workers. Higher pay only matters if you can keep your job. Still, recent hikes, like California's new $20 minimum wage for fast food workers, haven't led to massive layoffs. Of course, there could be an impact on consumers too, since businesses often pass part of those higher labor costs onto prices.
Let's say your burrito costs 10 cents more, but that's because the guy behind the counter who's making that burrito is making a living wage, and that feels like a worthwhile trade-off to me.
It's difficult to say with certainty how a higher federal minimum wage would play out, since much depends on factors like the strength of the labor market, regional differences, and of course the actual wage level. For years, progressives pushed for a $15 minimum wage, but with inflation, that goal has now been raised to $17.
But it's hard to know the right amount, but I do think you have to figure in Washington, supposedly the land of compromise, there's really a ton of space between $7.25 and $15 or $17, and they could pick something in there that might make sense.
A minimum wage hike probably won't happen this year, but it could be revisited in 2025. Kamala Harris has voiced support for raising it, so the issue may come back onto the table next year.